Well, hello, brethren out there. Shabbat Shalom to all that are looking and seeking and searching for the truth, the Torah, the Mashiach. We welcome you to Branches of Yah, and we have another podcast, number 9. And again, we have Ancient Path Remnant. And tonight we wanted to talk about surrendering and submitting ourselves to Yah and surrendering to His will and stop with our expectations and allow Him to do what He's doing in our life instead of trying to be so helpful. So welcome, Ancient Path Remnant. Thank you for joining me again. As always, we love having you.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I'm happy to talk about this topic with you. And I think it's really important as we see the world changing and difficulties ahead, that this is going to be so important for us to understand how to surrender and let Yah work in our lives and help us to overcome some things in life. So this is a good topic tonight.
Absolutely. So did you have some specific things? I guess I shared with you a little earlier. I guess I can share with everyone out there some of the things. I had a bunch of little things happening lately, just staying in prayer and really just surrendering my will to saying whatever happens, I'm okay with it. And that it really came to fruition that I was able to see it work. I had some reimbursement from one company that I hadn't looked like I wasn't gonna got messed out of because of mistakes that they had made, and I'd kind of prayed about it, and I just had it, in my heart that I wish something could have come out of it, and I didn't expect, if anything were to, it was going to be much. And then the next day, out of the blue, this company calls me and says, "We have a check for you. Come get it." And that was fantastic. And then they had high praise. I guess they really liked me and were telling people about me. And so I walked in there and was known by the clientele and all the employees that hadn't met me. And I was just praising Yah for that. I was like, wow, that's kind of strange to walk in and find out your dentist and all their staff really just think so highly of you. And I'm thinking, that's him, certainly not me. Of course, in the line of work I do, I'm waiting for wait between big jobs coming up, which we have more coming up. I've been getting calls on that. I haven't been really worried about it, and I'm getting calls, "Hey, are you available?" So that's been great. The interim money coming in on the interim was having trouble with that. Just kind of prayed about it and left it in Yah's hands, and was just like, okay, I'm not going to stress it. Didn't stress about it. Was just like, whatever. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm fine with it either way. And of course, that came through. Suddenly, more money came through. I was like, wow, this is crazy. Had a dog that I told you about. It's a beautiful, wonderful dog, and she just kind of didn't have a very loving attitude. She's sweet to us, but not loving, not overly loving. And we prayed on her and we talked about it like we don't know what to do. We just, because we absolutely adore our pets and we treat them so wonderfully, and because we just love them to death, because they're just part of the family. They just really are. And went to sleep that night after praying and talking to her and about her and to Yah and to ourselves, and woke up the next day to a completely different dog, and she's been a different dog ever since. And these kind of things I'm finding, because you had mentioned this before, I'm finding that when you just trust that whatever's going to happen is going to, work out for your benefit, that He's not just, and if it doesn't, there's a reason for that too, and that's okay too. And being okay with the outcome either way, whether I had any of this stuff would have happened, and being okay with it and knowing that whatever His will is, whatever purpose this can serve, and sometimes it's not His will so much that we're battling against either what Shaitan is trying to block, or one of his minions, or it's our own self, unfortunately, gets in the way quite often. Because of our expectations and our desire of a certain outcome. But when we lay that at His feet and say, The outcome's up to you. This is, the supplications of my heart, and I'll ask for it, and I'll ask for it, and I'll ask for it. And however it takes form, I'm fine. If it works out this way, I'm fine. If it works out another way, I'm fine. If it doesn't work out either way at all, and it's something like completely unexpected, and maybe I don't think I want it, well, believe me, if I'm praying about it, and I know he's faithful to answer, so I really did. I really didn't care either way. I was fine. Whatever was going to happen was going to happen. And in 1 week, all these things happened. And it was just like, praise Yah. And it may not happen for everybody that way. Sometimes they pray and they have an expectation. And then when it happens another way, there's a reason for that. There's a purpose. And the purpose may be just to recenter us on him, and to focus our love, our affection, our desire, and sometimes just to humble us. So anyways, you were talking about, he was kind of showing you some things about surrendering our will and our desire for a specific outcome to him, and that he kind of shown you some things in your life that you didn't know existed, and it really kind of changed some things for you as well.
Yeah, we hold on to the outcome of situations so much. Like, we have a preconceived idea of how something should work out. Even relationships, even, situations with people, whatever it is. And as you're talking about financial, whatever it may be that we're going through, oftentimes we pray for things and then we attach an outcome to that situation. And this is something he showed me a long time ago. But what's interesting is that he brought it to completion recently, and understanding that I was still attaching outcomes, even if it's the little things I'm attaching an outcome, like my idea of how something should work out. This is how I think it should work out. And when it doesn't, there's disappointment. And what he's shown me recently, and the best way, I just want to tell people, if you want to hear from Yah, get outside and go for a walk in the trees and out in nature where, you're around all that good oxygen from the trees. And it really, if you're moving forward and you're walking, something about just listening to him, don't listen to any, podcasts or anything at that time. Really listen to him, and he'll teach you things. The YaHUaH will teach you. And so I was walking, and he, just teaches me these things, and said, stop attaching an outcome to any situation. Stop expecting your own outcome. Let go of whatever it is that you're attached to, whatever outcome it is. Now, that doesn't mean you can't pray for stuff. And of course you pray, but then release and let go of the outcome of that situation, because whatever his will is going to be for our greatest good if we don't limit him. It's almost like if we have an idea of how something should work out and we stay attached to that, then we limit him. And I'll have to do a video on this, because I had a dream a few years ago about this. And like I said, it's been brought to a more complete understanding. So I'll have to do a video to show everyone how this works. But he has a predetermined greatest good for us each day. And when we limit him with our own desire and will, and then we get disappointed, we attach a disappointment, and then it's like our faith that's like almost a faith destroyer. When it doesn't happen the way we think it should. Now, if we just surrender that and let his will be done, we've prayed for it. We thank him for his greatest good. We let go of the outcome, pray for someone else, take your mind off of the outcome. And what's interesting is you'll see a totally different situation happen than you ever expected. It'll be above what you expected. And sometimes it's not necessarily financial or anything like that. It's just a peace and a joy inside of you that surpasses understanding. And, in 2 Corinthians 5:7, it says, for we live by faith, not by sight. And may Yah of hope fill you with all joy and shalom as you trust in him, so that you may overflow with hope by the power of the Ruach HaKodesh. This is, that was 2 Corinthians 5:7, for we live by faith, not by sight. And then the next one was Romans 15:13. But it's, if you let go of the outcome and you walk with gratitude, I'm telling you, don't attach an outcome to a situation other than to thank him for his greatest good. Even if you prayed for something, we saw that our Messiah said, if you would take this cup from me, if it's your will, Father, but not my will or my desire, your will and your desire, Father. So it was, he prayed for something, if you're willing to take this cup from me, but not my will or desire. And so that's really what it has to be. It has to be, we pray for something, then we let go of the outcome. You'll see that the burdens of the world will just melt off you. I'm talking, when you let him produce the greatest good that he has for you, then he fills you with such joy. You can't help but thank him so many times a day. And thanking him, being grateful for every outcome, because he's working everything out for our good. And just like a little child, they may have to have something taken away from them, and they may not like it. They might throw a fit, but they don't understand that thing may not be good for them. So he may be withholding some things that aren't good for us, but we thought we wanted those things. And it's amazing that he has a predetermined path already laid out for us. He's already created a path for us to take, that we would walk in it. His greatest good for us. Can you imagine living in that place of just always walking in his greatest good? Because we've let go of what we decided was our desire and our will. And it's always been about his will and his desire, because he knows what's good for us. And, do this to even the smallest little things, like little situations with people or situations that you go through, and just surrender the outcome, let it go. You'll see that the burdens will just melt off you. And you can all of a sudden walk with a different kind of joy, shalom. You don't walk in that fear anymore, because if you know he has your greatest good in mind, then what is there to fear? There's nothing to fear, because he loves us. He wants to take care of us, just like a good parent would. So it's amazing how when we let go and we surrender to him, he really does bring those barakot blessings in our lives. So that's what he's shown me. You'll see that if you pay attention to everything that you expect, how many things you expect of him, and how it can kind of destroy faith if you don't get what you want. But it doesn't work like that. It's about what he wants, his will and his desire. So really let go of the outcome, even the littlest outcomes and littlest situations, and know that there's a reason why he's doing everything. There's something to teach either you or someone else. There's a learning experience. There's a growth experience. Growing pains hurt. If you grow from a situation, growth hurts, sometimes. But he's making us more fruitful through these things, pruning some things off and helping us to grow more fruitful for his kingdom. So we have to go through some of these things. And if we let him do the work in us and we trust him, I tell you, it'll work out for your greatest good. So letting go, really letting go and surrendering to his will and his desire, and it'll bring such a different outcome for every situation. You'll be so surprised. And thank him. Thank him for the little things. Thank him for things that didn't work out the way you expected, but thank him for it anyway, because he knows what's the best. And then you'll start seeing things work out as you started talking about. Things started changing. And the other thing I would say about that is that you're operating now in the spiritual realm rather than in the fleshly, carnal mind of it. If I'm attaching an outcome to something and I want my desire, that's really just my flesh wanting it. So by letting the Spirit operate, giving, full control to our Father to work out a situation, all of a sudden, mountains move and things happen, and he smooths our path, and he moves all the obstacles out of the way. You'll be amazed. So that's something really try to do, and let go of all your fears, because fear is not fear of man or fear of the world and fear of the situations going on is not faith. So it says, praise YaHUaH. Baruch is the one who fears YaHUaH, who greatly delights in his commandments. And we know that, returning to him and trusting him and returning to his ways, then he says, his word says, choose life or death, barakot, blessings or curses. And so you'll have that good favor upon you when you trust in him and you choose that life, that path of life. So.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and a lot of times we don't even realize that we're what's in the way. That sometimes, the outcome is determined by our action or our inaction, by our belief or lack thereof. Our expectation sometimes comes from the pride of the flesh, and we don't even realize it. That flesh is popping up in places we thought, oh, I know I've got that all set down. And do you? I mean, how many? I don't see anywhere anyone at any time has ever said, yeah, I'm perfected now. It's like, he's still perfecting us. He's still working, and it's a daily thing. And that's what he says, renew your mind. We're to renew our mind, and we're to renew it by the hearing and the hearing of the word. It's something we're to do daily. And I think oftentimes people don't understand that, yeah, we're doing this daily. This is not something we're just doing, like, oh, I prayed on that and it's done. It's like the whole the baker, when he's knocking on the door and he keeps asking him, it's like, ask him, but maybe he wanted rye bread and he didn't have it. He had sourdough or whatever the case might be. Sometimes he's working or trying to work around you. We often want to blame something else, some other spiritual attack that we're going under. A lot of times it's our own ruach that is blocking him. It's our own pride. Like you said, it's that we're almost imposing on him. It's like, well, I want a new car, but make sure it's a Porsche, kind of thing. It's like we're telling him what we want and how we want it and when we want it and when we expect it, or if we don't get it exactly the way, it's like, and then somebody shows up and says, I don't know why, but I was told to come give you a bicycle. And instead of being happy about it and saying, thank you so much for giving me anything, we often don't, and we often think, and we do, we're getting in our own way. And it comes down to the pride of the flesh. The flesh desires to be puffed up above everything. The knowledge that we have, we desire to do it. First Shemuel, when he's talking about Agag and they go to attack, when Shemuel is talking to Shaul or Saul, and he's telling him, don't let any of the Amaleks live, none of them. Don't let any of them live. Let nothing. Everything is to be put under the ban. And they go in, and he captures Agag. Wasn't supposed to. He was supposed to put him under the ban, exterminate him utterly, because Yah knows what's going on. Okay, so they weren't letting him out of Mitzrayim. They didn't let him cross over to the land. He says, not even the suckling baby, not their cows, their dogs, nothing. So what's he do? He's already given him the rule of Yisrael. He's already made him the leader. He said, "Here, I'm lifting you up. He was nothing. Shaul, if you read about him, he was nothing." And Yah said, I want to lift you up." And he goes in there and he says, I'm gonna keep. They kept the calves. They were complaining, so they kept the best of the gold and the silver, and they said, "Oh, we're going to make stuff, and it's going to be a donation to Yah." And he wanted to give him the reign to rule over his people in righteousness and his righteousness, and he was going to give him that barakot. He was going to, like none other, he was going to lift him up if he just, listened and he got out of the way. But what happens when he comes and he chastises him? He says, "Why did you not listen to the voice?" And he says, "How have I not listened to the voice? In what way didn't I listen? I did this, I did this, I went wherever you told me to, and I've gotten the very best to give an offering." And he says, "Does he delight in your offerings? Is it your killing of animals on the altar that he desires? No, he desires our heart. It says that he desires an obedient heart because obedience is born out of love." And so what happened? He he thought if he did a certain thing his way, that the Barracote would be even greater. So after he did this, he thought, if he's going to do this for me now, wait till he sees all these things. We want to add to what he wants to do for us. We want to help him, and often our help is hindering us. It's hindering him, because he's like, "No, I just want you to do it just as I said. No ups, no extras, no nothing. I want you to obey me because you love me enough to obey me." And we oftentimes find it. And what happened? He said, because of this, he took him out of his rule. After that, it was like, you're done. Look what happened to Moshe and Aharon when he says, "Go say to the rock that the YaHUaH commands you bring forth water." And he goes over there with the stick and he smacks it and he starts chastising them, and Yah's left out of the mix entirely. And he says, "Because you have done this wickedness." What wickedness? Well, he told Saul the same thing. He says, your disobedience is this witchcraft. It's like divination to me. It's all the same to me. Disobedience is you just thinking you know better. And he's like, "I'm telling you don't." And it's all throughout Scripture. And it's about humbling ourselves. It's about saying, my only expectation is that I love you, and I know that if I pray to you, you're going to answer my prayer. How you're going to answer it, what's going to come of it, or even if I'm going to receive that thing I'm praying for, because you know best, I'm okay with whatever, because I know if you'll feed the birds of the air, the beasts of the field, then what am I worried about? How am I now, if they have feathers and they're covered, how am I going to worry about whether or not you're going to meet my needs? You may not give me my wants, but you'll always meet my needs. And my particular case turned out to be mostly financial, which wasn't a big deal. But it was great, because I was like, I was okay with it either way. The biggest thing was our puppy was, just, she's just this. She was always sweet. She was always wonderful, but there was just this whole change of heart. The love that she displays now in one night. I'm like, that's him working. That's him. That's us just praying, and just, neither one of us expect to wake up to a different dog. We had no expectation of him, and it always is. If it be your will. I think
Yeah.
we pray for our family that way as well. We pray for, and I know you do too. It's like, yeah, if it be your will, if you can move the hardened heart of any whatever member it might be, in my family, that they might hear this and that they might seek you. And really, I think that's what comes down to, when we're doing it because we really want his esteem more than we want him to esteem us. I think when we can humble ourselves enough to say, "I don't care if no one knows this, what you've done for me, that you did this thing for me and it makes me look a certain way, but I want everyone to know that you do things, that you answer prayers, that you move all things, that you have the plan, that you know best, that your right rulings are just and righteous and beautiful and honey to the mouth." That when we can get our heart in that place, I think we'll see changes. And I think we need to right now, because we are we are so in the way. Our expectations of Yah right now are dependent upon ethnicity. It's dependent upon the genealogy. I mean, there's so many people out there putting all these arguments about things that have nothing to do with the message of Yah. and no flesh enters into the kingdom. It says what is flesh is of flesh, and what is of ruach is of ruach. Flesh cannot enter into his kingdom. It is corrupted. All flesh and all things of the flesh. The lust of the flesh.
And the pride of life, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is something you and I have talked about before, is that I've found that when I try to move the flesh of people, when I'm just speaking to them and trying to move their flesh by anything other than speaking the word to them, if I start harping on someone about something and I'm trying to move them in the flesh, and you get this resistance from people, they don't want to hear it, right? They, at times, if you're especially talking about the word, and you keep trying to move them in the flesh, not realizing that's YAH's job. Like we've said,
Yeah.
It's YAH's job. If we would just take it to him and pray for them, he says, pray for your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, pray for those, that need deliverance and saving. Go to him. See, we are always trying to do it in our flesh, in our strength. And what we don't realize, it's in his strength and his power. It's by his spirit that we move stuff. And so when we keep trying to harp on someone about change or doing this or that, speaking the word to them is what plants the seed, but you're never going to move flesh. You're going to be, resisted by a wall. But if you go in the spirit and you go in the spirit of it, and you go to YAH and you pray for these people, and that he would move their heart, till up their hearts, change the heart, change the inside, that now can be reflected on the outside through change. You're not going to change anyone on the outside, from the outside in. You've got to change them from the inside out. So you've got to go in the spirit and work on these things and surrender it to him, to let him till up the heart, because he can do anything to someone's life in an instant. He can work on that person. It sounds like what happened with your dog. I mean, there is just amazing how he can just work on anything and change the heart of the matter. Oh. And that's where you get the power. It's not our power, it's his spirit that goes in and works in those people. And we rely on ourselves so much to change other people. See, this is what he says. That's his job, to change the people, to give them a new heart, a new ruach, to transform their minds, to change them from the inside out. If we're just trying to force people to do from the outside in, it's not going to work. If the heart doesn't change, then it's not pleasing to him. No one will ever do anything out of love in their hearts for him if they haven't changed that part of themselves and allowed him to work on it. And so really understanding that when we try to go in the flesh of things and force people to make changes, we're operating in the fleshly realm, and we're never going to make any progress. But by his spirit, go to him, and he will work that out and work on their lives. See, he doesn't go against our will. Our free will is to choose. And if we go to him and say, Father, I pray for this person, well, we just opened that ability for him now to work on them. He doesn't go and change people's minds if they don't want his help, if they don't want him. He says, ask and keep on asking, seek and keep on seeking, knock and keep on knocking. He wants you to come to him. He wants us to want him with all our hearts. And then change happens. So I think until we realize that it's a move in the spirit that has to happen. And remember, the power of words, the power of the prayers that we speak. The life and death is in the power of the tongue. We speak his words and we bring life on this earth. And that's where real change happens.
Well, yeah, and you're right, because look, our words, every word that we speak is a judgment unto itself. It's a sword. Now it either cuts away what is righteous, or it can cut away what is unrighteous. Now his word cuts away all unrighteousness, but our words cuts away the righteousness. It quenches the fire of the ruach that wants to burn so brightly within us. And again, it's this, our desired outcome, our I believing we're owed something, that we're somehow special in any kind of way, and we're just not. He lifts us up because he's esteemed in doing so. He takes the lowly of heart and he lifts them up. He esteems those that humble themselves. Um, and some verses on there that you were talking about earlier in 1 John 2:16, it says, "For all that is in the world is the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the boastful pride of life. It's not from the Father, but it is from the world." And what you were talking about, the heart, it's in YaHUaH or Jeremiah 17:9. It says, "The heart is more deceitful than anything else, and it is desperately sick. Who can understand it?" So oftentimes we think it's in our heart to do what's best for him, but really it's us, and we don't even realize it. And it's funny that it says in Romans 7:18, it says, "For I know that nothing that is right dwells in me, that is in my flesh. For the willing is present in me, but the doing of what is right is not." And in 8:5, it says, "For those who are according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who are doing according to the Ruach, the Spirit, the things of the." So when we set our mind, when we set our focus on him, the things of the Ruach, the greater things, the lean not unto our own understandings, but accept him, look for his righteousness in all things in that Ruach. In 8:8, it says, "And those who are in the flesh," those who are still thinking in their flesh, still doing in their flesh, still identifying themselves in their fleshly, temporary, dying bodies, says, "cannot please Elohim." It's impossible to please him. But it says, "If you live according to the flesh, you must die. But if by the Ruach you are putting to death the deeds of the body, and you will live." And
Right.
This is a submitting ourselves spiritually in the Ruach. We're submitting ourselves to his will and his desire, because our flesh is going to tell us all kinds of things. Our flesh is going to tell us there's something special about me. There's something special about my people, people who look like me or talk like me or from the same country as me or whatever it is, from the same genealogy or the same family, and they're so lifted up in their flesh and they have no relationship to him in the Ruach. And that's the only way he says to worship him, is in the Ruach and in truth. So we cannot please him while we're in our flesh. It says it's impossible to please him. So we're getting in our way because we're still so tied to our desire, our wants, and they're fleshly. We really have to fish out why we want what we want. If you desire the love and kindness and compassion of others, and you're praying for that, you may not see it yourself. You might be changing them because you're moving things to align for them. You may never witness what you did, and that's okay too. A lot of times we want to see the fruit of, we want to reap what we've sowed. We sowed something. We want to stay there and watch it grow. And that looks good. I want to try that too. We want to eat of its fruit, and we want to be part of it. And sometimes it's just enough to know that he says, pray for, like he said, pray for your enemies, pray for those who persecute you, pray for those who hate you. You are changing yourself. You may not even perceive it. You are changing yourself, but the real change might be in them, because it might not be for you to come into their life and make the change in their life and for them to see the error of their ways, or to have, it may be for somebody else entirely, or maybe you're just heaping up coals upon their head. Either which way, Yah's got the plan. He has everything well in hand. He does not need our help to do what is right and correct. We need his.
Yeah, I think that's the thing too, is that we just so often want what we want. And that's the thing. If we can just want what he wants for us and be grateful for it. And I recognize this in my children. It's when they're grateful for what I give them, when they're grateful for the effort that I put into what I give them, and they're happy about it, then it makes me want to do more for them. Just naturally, I want to give them more for their good attitude and their, being grateful and happy for what I've given them. And, contrary to that, if they throw fits all the time, they have a poor attitude about it, then I would withhold things because they need to learn not to throw fits and not to do that. So there's correction for having a poor attitude. So that's one thing I just really want to stress, is having the right attitude toward Yah, always with gratitude. No matter what he gives you, he knows what he's doing and he wants to give us more, but we're in the way. Like our little, we throw fits, we get upset. In fact, a little while ago, I was talking to someone at the grocery store, and he was witnessing to me, and he didn't realize I was a believer. And but he was telling me how he gets upset sometimes at Yah, and how he, really kind of throws his fits sometimes. And I was saying, yeah, I mean, we all do that until we understand that, he withholds for a reason. It's like a child, throwing our fits. We throw our fit, but we realize we come to the end of ourselves. Once we do that, we have to come to the end of ourselves and realize it's his will, because he knows what's good, and he works all things together for good to those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So knowing that faith is so important, knowing that he is working everything for our greatest good. And I guarantee it'll work out better than you could ever imagine. It's, surrendering to that and trusting him, that faith, it's his work in us. No one's going to be judged based on their works of the flesh. Period. No one. It's going to be in our heart's desire to submit to his will and let him work on us. He's doing the work in us so that we can change and into his image and likeness. No one's going to boast. It's going to be all his esteem. So when we think in the flesh we're doing all these great things and our heart is far from him, that's not going to be pleasing to him at all. So that's why we really have to understand that if we just are grateful and submit to his will and know that it's far over and above all we could dream, because you can't go and buy shalom, peace, the peace he gives, the joy he gives, the love he gives, the compassion and mercy he gives in your life. It's really a supernatural thing. And if you don't mind, I'll tell a little story about that. Please. Just a little testimonial.
Please.
So, a few years ago, my vehicle was pretty much brand new a few years ago. And my boys and I were going to the grocery store. And we live out in the country, but it's still, there are houses and stuff. There are people around, but we live out in the country. And my vehicle, like I said, it was kind of a new vehicle at the time. And so we were, I'd say, about 2 miles from my house. And on this country road, this side road that leads out to more of a major road. So it was this side road that my car decided it stopped running. It just stopped. And so, normally you would be kind of upset about something like that, but I was not upset at all. I don't know what it was. It was just the weirdest thing. I was abnormally joyful. You can't explain it. I was joyful. I don't know why. It's just because he was filling me with this joy. And my husband couldn't get there for about an hour. So the boys and I, we opened the doors and we got out, and it was a beautiful, perfect, like the temperature was perfect. And we were overlooking some, rolling hills and pasture land, and it was just beautiful. And there were flowers growing, and we found some blackberries growing. wild blackberries, and it was just like, it was just so beautiful. It was such a good bonding experience, and my boys were having fun finding these berries and, you know, the flowers and things. Well, we got kind of tired of that. We kind of did all that, and it was a beautiful day, and we're used to walking, so I decided, well, we'll just walk home, because it was about 2 miles. And so I was getting my things out of the car, and I just said, Yah, I thank you, Yah. This is how I pray. I always thank him when I pray. I say, thank you for doing something as if it's already done. So I said, thank you, Yah, for getting us home safely. That's all I said. I didn't, you know, it was thank you for getting us home safely. And I was getting my stuff out of the car. I literally locked the doors and closed the door. And I didn't even hear another vehicle, but there was a police officer right in front of my car, you know, coming toward us. Well, he was already at my car. Like, literally, y'all get us home safely, close the doors, there's a police officer. We're on a country road. Like, it's not so out of the realm of possibility that a police officer would show up right at that moment. Like, it's not totally out of possibility, but we're out in the country, and there's no one I would let take us home, you know, unless I knew who they were. And I don't know where he even showed up from. I didn't hear a car, I guess because I was getting my things, and he asked if we needed a ride home. And I was able to witness to him. It turned out he was an unbeliever. And so I witnessed to him, and I was joyful, and I was telling him about Yah, and he, you know, you can't, it's like Yah had it already planned, this whole thing, and I just had to ask for it. He already had it ready, and oftentimes we don't even ask for it. So by asking for it and thanking him, and I didn't even put an outcome to it, I was just, thank you for getting us home safely. And I was able to witness to this man, and he was very nice, and he has children and a wife, and he was an unbeliever. So I might have planted a seed, I don't know, but just that timing, being out in the country, it's, you know, there's no one else that could have taken us home unless I knew them.
Right.
And he drove us home, and we talked, and it was a good talk. And well, we went back, you know, a little bit later to get my vehicle, and tried to started it up, drove it home. Nothing was wrong with it. There was nothing wrong with it. Nothing ever happened to the vehicle. Like, nothing was wrong with it. There was nothing that needed to be fixed. It ran from then on.
So that was like, really wasn't about you at all. It was about him.
Right.
He wanted to see. Right. He wanted the seed to be planted, and he just used that moment. So.
And see, I could have been really upset about not being able to do my errands, not being able to go. I was beyond. It was supernatural. It was just like a abnormal joyfulness. I was in so much joy that whole day. It was just, I just felt his love so deeply, that those simple little things, but he's able to fill you with such a joy that you can't buy that in the world. You can't get that. And look how he worked that out so that I could talk to that man. And if I had had a poor attitude or something, maybe I wouldn't have been in such a joyful mood. Maybe I would have attached some negative outcome, and then maybe this answer would not have even shown up. He wouldn't have even given me that opportunity because of an attitude. Oftentimes when we grumble or gripe and complain, he withholds, just like a child. You know, you have to withhold things from them if it's not good for them, and if they gripe and complain. But I was so joyful in this, and he really, I still remember just how joyful I was that day, and being able to talk to this man, and that he showed up at that time, that moment, that time, that place, way out in the country.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, it's just, Yah works everything out. If we could just see that maybe something we go through is so that he can show how he saves us, and how we are a witness to how Yah works in our lives. And just knowing that if he diverts a situation, if he changes a situation for you, it may be for a purpose. He's got someone he needs you to talk to. He's got someone you need to witness to. So trusting the outcome of every situation, be grateful, even if you're on the side of the road, and be joyful in those moments and just trust him. Don't attach the outcome that you think. So it's just an amazing thing how he works out everything for our good. If we could just see it.
Well, in Matthew in 11:29, where the Messiah says, "Take my yoke upon you." Take my yoke. Now, many people, I have a video up about the yokes and yoking yourself. So you would take his yoke. So you're under his tutelage, his training. He's leading, he's guiding. This is language of humbling, because we have to willingly take upon us his yoke. So we are yoking ourselves to him because he's the leader here. We would have to submit. If he wants to go left, we go left. If he wants to go right, if he wants to go straight, we go straight. If he wants to stop, we stop. No questions asked, no fighting, no asking what's happened, why are we doing this? We just do it. So he's saying, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am meek and humble in heart, and you shall find rest for your beings. So when we drop our expectation, our desire, the lust of the flesh, the things that come of the lust of the flesh, and all the things that we don't even realize are lust of the flesh, our personal identity, our notoriety, our fame and fortune, all those things are all tied to our flesh. It is when we humble ourselves to say, I'm following you and wherever I may go. If that's out, it doesn't matter. If I end up homeless and that's where he needs me to be because there's somewhere I've got to be, or maybe Satan means something, to destroy me, to try to destroy my faith, to test my faith, like Job. And this way he's showing, no, he's not gonna. So we never know what his plan is exactly for testing us, for trying us, for cutting away that last little bit. And we all have that last bit, no matter how far we've come. There's some part of us that still needs to go. Some part of our flesh, some part of our, like you said, our expectations, and imposing them upon him, a desired outcome, a want, things that, okay, I'm okay. And like you said, praising, having that attitude of gratitude. Don't mean to be, hitting people with platitudes, but when we do that, when we realize that I'm grateful for everything. I'm grateful that in my selfishness, that he didn't just let me self-destruct, because there's so many times it could have happened. I'm so grateful that for whatever reason, he used the strangest thing. He used Muslims to break my heart, not for the religion itself, the Islam, but watching them, devout followers, humbling themselves and getting an understanding that they hadn't been walking in that love and that humility, and he used that to shock me. I mean, normally you would just be like, oh, that's great, that's whatever, but this is it floored me. And it was a strange thing that I realized it. And yeah, I don't ever want any of us to go back to placing our expectations. If I don't cuss, if I keep his Shabbat, if I keep his Moedims, his Shabbats, his Sabbatons, if I do this, if I do that, then he says, if you shall do all I shall do, I shall be your Most High, your Elohim, and you shall be my people. That's the contract. The contract is, if we do what he's asking us, if we love him more than anything and everything and everyone, and place him first, and love our fellow as we love ourselves, then he will be our Most High. He'll be like a father to us. And I don't know how many people out there have had fathers that have put a belt across their backside for getting out of hand, but sometimes we get spankings when we get out of line. He says that he does that for our benefit. If he loves us enough to keep us on the straight and narrow path that leads to him. And I just recommend for all of us to stop walking, thinking, and doing in our flesh. Leave our expectations. He says, if you shall do all that I have asked you to do, then I shall be your Elohim. Everything after that is just that icing on the cake. If you have a day like I had, where within a sequence of a week, all these things happen and you just see things moving in the Ruach and you know it's his hand upon things, that's fantastic. But if it didn't happen that way, it's still fantastic. His hand's still working. He's working when we can't see, and he's working when we can.
Right. And it says to be content with what you have. And I think a lot of times we're so focused on future. Well, what am I going to get? What am I, all of our future plans of all of our wants. It's important to have goals, but it seems to be, we always want something more, and then we'll be happy when we get that. We'll be happy if we have that now, or now that I need something else, I'll be happy. But he says, be content with what you have, because then you can live in the moment, you can live in the present, and let the present be a gift, and appreciate what you have. You'll be amazed if you can find things that are you're grateful for, that are simple things. You'll be amazed how much more joyful your life will be if you can find joy in the little things. And he uses people as messengers. He uses people to interact with each other as his messengers. And everyone that we encounter has something to teach us, something about ourselves that we either want to be like or don't want to be like, and we learn from one another. And so he puts things and situations in our lives for a reason. We always give credit to Hasatan for all these things, but nothing happens that YAH doesn't allow. Nothing happens that YAH didn't say yay or nay. Even with Job, nothing happened to Job that YAH didn't allow. And it was because, Job couldn't let go of his fear. His fear was stopping him from actually receiving the joy and the barakah and the blessings. He just couldn't let go of his fear of losing things, losing his worldly possessions. And YAH allows that to come upon us when we don't trust him. So it's better to trust him with, even if you have a little bit, so he can give you more, because he gives more if you can handle it. But we really have to be grateful for what he gives us, even if it's, like I've said before, just having the fruits of the Spirit in our lives is beyond anything. You can have so much money, you can have so many things and be just so miserable. What's the point of existence? And I'd rather have all those good fruits overflowing within me, and be joyful in him, be grateful for the little things, and trust him. He says if we don't trust him, it's not pleasing to him. If we don't have faith in what he's doing. And so I'm going to read YaHUaH, Isaiah 43:2.
Okay.
Now this is what YaHUaH says. He who created you, O Jacob, and he who formed you, O Yasharel, do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you go through the rivers, they will not overwhelm you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be scorched. The flames will not set you ablaze. For I am YaHUaH, the Kodesh one of Yasharel, your Savior. he's there. He may allow us to go through things, but he always brings us through it, especially if we're grateful. When we start griping and complaining, we withhold the promise that he has for us on the other side of it, the green pasture. And so we really have to understand, if we can let go of our idea of what our life should be and surrender that to him, because he knows what's best, he'll do far over and above all that we could dare ask or think, and so it's just a beautiful thing, and that grows our relationship, that restores the breach, that the breach of the covenant, the breach of contract that we had with him. It restores a right relationship with him when we trust him. Isn't every relationship built on trust, right?
Yeah, I think it's just when we are stuck in the flesh, and what our flesh expects, and believe me, our flesh expects, even if we're not aware of it, our flesh has expectations and desires, and when we're walking still attached to that, that's what happens. I want to read myself here. It talks about in Galatians 5:19, and theirs might say, some might say the works, but others will say the fruit. So the fruit of the flesh, is well known, which are whoring, uncleanliness, indecency, idolatry, drug, sorcery, hatred, quarrels, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambitions, dissensions, factions, envy, murderers, drunkenness, wild parties, and the like, which I have forewarned you, even as I had said before, those who practice such as these will not inherit the reign of Elohim. But the fruit of the Ruach, the Spirit, is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, trustworthiness, gentleness, self-control, and against such things there is no law of sin and death attached. So these are the things, because the next verse in 24 says, and for those who are of HaMashiach have impaled the flesh with its passions and desires. And if we live in the Ruach, the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. And I think that we don't really understand how much the flesh wants you to stay in the flesh, and we don't need Hashatan to tempt us at all. It says our own hearts are wicked and deceitful above all. And we don't need him. We want to blame him so that we feel like we can shirk. Isn't that exactly what happened in the garden? Did he not go to the woman, and the woman said, the serpent did deceive me, and so I did eat?
Mm-hmm.
And the woman gave, so I ate. It was this deflection of somebody else is always responsible for. It's like, open yourself up to say, I walked this way. Open yourself up for the gratitude of it doesn't have to be my way. Open yourself up for the idea that Yah's working when you can't see him, and he's working when you can. And sometimes you're not going to like the outcome, but it's going to be for your benefit. Moshe and Aharon and the rest of them that were over 20 didn't get into the land, and there was a reason for that. It was their hearts. It was their unwillingness to do exactly as he's asked, and their constant complaining, and it was all fleshly that drove them away from his presence in the land where he wanted them to be. And that's what we're doing today when we put our preconceived ideas and notions and outcomes and things before him, and don't just ask him for. He says, ask me with a sincere heart. He wants us to ask. He says, you don't have because you don't ask. My children die daily for lack of knowledge. What is the knowledge? The knowledge of him and his love and that he is working all things out for your betterment. He is not working to destroy you. He has no desire that the wicked even should perish. So,
yes, and that all would come to repentance. Yeah. Romans 12:2, do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of Yah, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So it's so important that we walk with him, just hold his hand and realize that he's working everything out for our greatest good. And well, again, another example is when my youngest son was littler, he, I had to hold on to his hand real tight because he wanted to run off, and we might be in a parking lot or something, so I had to hold on to his hand real tight,
Yeah.
And I think we need to do that with our Heavenly Father. I mean, he holds on to us pretty tight, as long as we're holding on to his hand. Once we let go and start running, we might run into traffic. We might get ourselves hurt. So that's why he reins us in, and he has a plan. He knows. And sometimes, I've noticed that some things don't work out, and maybe we weren't meant to be there. Maybe he's protecting us from some sort of accident or something. You don't know what he's protected you from. We just get upset because something didn't work out the way we expected it to. And even relationships and things like that, you have to surrender even relationships, because this is how we learn. This is how we're all growing together, and we learn how to get along and deal with one another. And he's showing us how he wants us to be. So, he brings things into our lives that do prune away things, or that shine a light on something we need to see within ourselves. It's all for our good. And if we realize that, as painful and difficult as things are sometimes, it's not as painful when you know it's for your good. I've come to realize that, I don't really view things as punishment by him. I view it as for my greatest good. And there's a big difference when you think you're being tormented by Hasatan, or you think your Heavenly Father is just working everything out for your greatest good and you don't get everything you want. There's a big difference in that kind of a life. Once you surrender to his will, he's yours, you're his. You surrender to his ways. He may allow things to happen, but it's all for your good. So I view it differently now. It's not, I don't mind correction anymore, because I want to be that image that he wants me to be. And it's difficult sometimes, and it's painful sometimes, but whatever he needs to do, because, that day that we stand in front of him on Judgment Day, I would rather go through it now than to have to deal with it then and disappoint him face to face. So it's good to go through these things now. If you're struggling with a lot right now, just know that it's better to go through it now. This is the training ground. This is the wilderness journey and the spiritual growth time. And understand that if you're going through some challenges and difficulties, that he loves you and he's working it out for your good. And look at it maybe in a different way and thank him for bringing you through it more quickly. Because that's another thing I've found, is that if you don't learn the lesson, it prolongs it, or you have to have it happen again and again until you learn it. There's almost like a graduation phase of, okay, I've learned that, I've mastered that, now on to the next thing. So the quicker we can get through those things and realize that he's just putting us through a refinement process so that we can be pure in his sight, that means everything to me. So I'm willing to endure some things now in order to be, hopefully clean before him on that day. So it's worth it. It's worth to go through those things, even if it's difficult. Try to look at it differently, though, in terms of being grateful and knowing that he's working everything out for good. You may have to stand in a lion's den, but he can wire those lion's mouths shut,
Right.
not to harm you. And you may have to stand in some fire, but it won't burn you. You may have to face a giant, but he's going to give you the strength to, conquer it. So that's what you have to see, is that you may have to, stand up to some things, but he always gets you through it.
And even then, we can't impose upon him the outcome that's going to happen. If he's put you before a trial or a tribulation, and the outcome isn't what you were hoping for, it'll be the best for you, no matter what it is. It really will be. I mean, look at what happened to all of the believers that walk with the Messiah. Many of them died for the faith, but I guarantee you their death didn't go unnoticed, because people watched and looked at that, and it drew more to him. So ultimately, it was for YAH's benefit. It was for YAH's good. Sometimes the things he's doing in our lives are for his esteem, and he's just using us as a vessel that he might be esteemed, that because he wants other people to see, I'm the true Father. I'm the one who created you. I'm the one who loves you. I'm the one who's waiting for you to return to me. And sometimes he uses us in that way, which is, I couldn't think of a better thing to be used for, is to be a light to his Torah, to his word, to his love, that somebody else might just see and might just turn and say, what's this all about? They were willing to even die without even a grumbling, just for him. So some people think that, why does this happen? Why does that happen? Why is it, the other time? Well, you don't always know, but just know he knows, and it's for the best. Like I say, it comes down to it. Let's not try to push what we want, but like the Messiah said, not my will, but yours.
Absolutely. In Luke 6:48, it says, I will show you what he is like who comes to me and hears my words and acts on them. He is like a man building a house who dug down deep and laid his foundation on the rock. When the flood came, the torrent crashed against that house, but could not shake it, because it was well built. But the one who hears my words and does not act on them is like a man who built his house on ground without a foundation. The torrent crashed against that house, and immediately it fell, and great was its destruction. So building on his foundation is the only way you survive those storms of life. Standing strong on his foundation, and his love, and just knowing that he always will protect his people, and he works everything out for our good. So yeah, you can't attach outcomes to situations and expect his greatest good, because we have expectations of him that he might have had something better for us, but he gives us the desire of our heart. So if we attach sort of negative outcomes to situations and we lose our faith in the process, then we kind of receive that in life.
That's a great point. I mean, when they gave the evil report, and then the two gave the righteous report before him, and they said that they would be destroyed. He essentially he let the desire of their heart, as you have said. So sometimes we do that. We speak the things that are going to come into our life, and again, we're hindering him by putting our expectation, positive or negative. Yeah, oftentimes we only think of our positive. We could say, because a lot of times we think we only have the best intentions for ourselves and others, and the fact is we've been filled with so much fear and negativity in this world that oftentimes we speak things that of destruction into our lives and others' lives, that we don't even realize it, even with the thoughts of our mind and the thought of our heart, even our own heart, what's become rooted in there, in that seat, that temple, that altar, that what comes out of our mouth is what is in our heart. That is, we are literally giving up. He says he desires the offerings of the bowls of our lips.
Yeah. Yep. Gratitude, being grateful to him, and really letting him work on our lives. Yeah, when we attach something negative, then that comes upon us, just like Job. Just that same way, what he feared came upon him. He said it himself, and that he didn't really know Yah just in theory, but at the end of it, he really knew him. He really knew in life experience. And that's the thing. He really wants us to know him. He really wants us to trust him. His word is gold. Gold refined in the fire. It's pure. There's no dross in that. And when we don't trust him, it's, that's just not pleasing to him when we don't trust him. So we have to trust him in all things. And it creates a wonderful relationship. And it sure takes a lot of stress and pressure off of our shoulders when we trust him. We don't have to carry the weight of the world on our shoulders anymore. We don't have to, carry the expectation of all these things. We can just surrender that and really walk in shalom. Really walk in his shalom and his peace.
Yeah, we'll definitely hit that up in greater depth as well later down of stop picking up your steak, and he doesn't ask you to. He wants you to walk with him. He does not want you to suffer and burden. He wants you to take upon him his yoke, his burden. He's not asking us to carry his and ours. He wants us to get out of the way of what he's doing for us, and he wants us to be grateful for what he does for us, and he wants to see that when he doesn't do something for us, will we still be grateful? Why did he said he humbled them to leave them out in the desert that whole time, that he left them out for 40 years to humble them. Because why? Because they came out with pride. Here he brings them out of slavery. 215 years they've been in Egypt, 215 years at Canaan, and he brings them out, and there's still pride there. So pride isn't always attached to your status in life and to the things that you have or don't. It's attached to your flesh. And so sometimes we're getting in our own way, and sometimes we speak the very things that we get, and then we wonder why. Well, why'd this happen? Well, didn't you say? Weren't you saying all week how your boss was probably going to fire you because you had to miss 2 weeks or whatever it was, and you offered, and then suddenly you end up. I said, how much of that was you going to work with that expectation? Did you help facilitate that? How much was it you just kept speaking it and speaking it and speaking it until it finally became the thing that you got? Because obviously that's what you wanted. You spoke that expectation. Yeah, and that's not having faith in him. Nope. So yeah, exactly. So learning those things, it's a daily thing where we have to be conscious of it. I catch, knowing these things, I still catch myself all the time. There's always work to be done, but as I keep catching these things and realizing, and it becomes, a conscious part of me, then I get better and better at doing it. So that's why we have to rehearse it, and keep working on it. So, yeah, he's definitely working everything out for good, and there's no reason to fear. Fear just takes away the good life that he wants for us. And we know we have the Philippians 4:6. I think I read that every time. It's one of my favorites, so. Shall I? Absolutely. All right. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, with gratitude. Let your requests be made known to Yah, and the peace, the shalom of Yah, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds in Messiah. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, and whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. I think that sums up everything. Absolutely. Right there. Yeah. And YaHUaH 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future. So, and if I could read one more. Go ahead. 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptation has overtaken you that is not common to man. Yah is faithful, and he will not let you be tempted beyond your ability. But with the temptation, he will also provide the way of escape, that you may be able to endure it. You notice that? There's always a way out.
always. That's kind of a key, a little secret to the kingdom. He always provides a way out.
Yep. You're not entrapped by these things anymore. You're not entrapped by the lust and the desires of the flesh. You're not entrapped by the law of sin and death, which was once a trapping and a curse. You're not entrapped by that anymore. When you walk in the Ruach, when you get out of his way, when you let him do what he's doing, when you just say, I'm going to pray for this, and I'm going to allow you to meet my need however you see fit. That's enough. And just know that whatever happens, that's okay. It doesn't mean, like you said earlier, doesn't mean I'm not going to keep knocking, not going to keep seeking, not going to keep asking. He wants us to. He wants to know if it's our will, that if it's truly our desire. Sometimes we'll ask for things, and he goes, I don't. He knows he's looking at our heart. Do we really want those things? Are we just asking in the moment? Sometimes somebody says something to us and they're mean, and we might pray for them, but sometimes we pray out of spite, almost like, I'm gonna heap coals upon their head, and we're not asking with the kind of heart. But he wants us in that moment to say, that person must be really struggling if they're coming at me like that, and keep asking for it. And again, everything we say moves the needle. We are moving things are moving in the Ruach. When we stop thinking about this world and this flesh and all that it has and all that it traps our minds and our hearts in, and we start walking in the Ruach, and we start thinking in the Ruach, and we start acting as though this meat suit is nothing. There's nothing that is attached to this body that I have that is of any interest to me whatsoever. The only thing is that he meets the sustenance that I might praise him and thank him one more day. That's the only thing, is it gives me more time to talk to others, to perhaps be a light to somebody, to esteem him, and to see that his word is true, and it's life, and it's light, and hope that somebody got that water. So.
Yep, exactly. Well, that's great, Branches. I think this is a really good topic. It's something to probably explore again in the future.
Absolutely.
And yeah, because it's something we have to keep reminding ourselves of daily. And sometimes we don't realize we're attaching our own outcome to situations, and we're not fully trusting Yah. So we'll talk about more of this in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll get into some of that other, like I said, that other stuff of laying our burdens down and not picking them back up, and we'll get into all those things. But that would just we want if anyone's listening out there, to hopefully this is something that if you're going through this too, and sometimes we think if we do a certain thing, then that's going to provide us a certain outcome, and when we stop trying to insist on our way in any way, shape, or form, or believe that somehow it's righteous behavior before him, and allow him to lift us up when we humble ourselves and lower ourselves. So maybe somebody's going through that and they're not seeing any fruit coming of what they're doing, and it's like, just have faith that things are moving. If your heart's sincerely seeking him, to worship him and to love him, things are moving, and he's working on your behalf. So we would just ask that all of you do that. So if you're looking for him and you're loving him, just keep seeking him, keep knocking, keep asking again and again with a sincere but contrite heart. Don't worry about what's going to come of it. Know that he does everything righteously. So thank you, H and Path Remnant. We thank you so much, and everybody listening. We love you all. We are so grateful for anyone who listens to this. And just keep seeking the Father and his word. Follow no man, follow no mankind. Do not follow them. Follow his Ruach HaKodesh, which will lead you. It doesn't mean you cannot learn from others, but we just implore you to not hitch yourself, yoke yourself to the Mashiach and his word, to what's given through his Father. So we just thank you so much for tuning in and listening to us, and hopefully somebody got something out of this. Thank you so much.